Good afternoon. Lead corrosion in lead service lines in Chicago is the topic that I will be talking to you about in public health. My name is Ananth Prabhu. The problem is that lead corrosion in lead service lines leads to a variety of health problems, most notably brain developmental issues. Furthermore, the problem is addressing continuous need to prevent lead ions from the lead service pipes from leaching into residential drinking water. The main question is, how are the lead service pipes maintained continuously to prevent lead poisoning to the city's residents? Lead service lines connect Chicago's water main line to individuals' homes. These lead service lines are commonly found between the streets and homes of the city. Some homeowners may have changed the pipes under their homes to copper, but this is costly and may cause as much as $20,000. There is no larger source of lead than the lead service lines for residential drinking water. Upon doing anti-corrosive measures, flushing lead-containing water takes a greater amount of time than the EPA recommendations. Low usage of water in some locations may have the greatest lead levels in its contained water. Exposed and disturbed lead service lines also have the greatest lead levels in its contained water. Lead corrosion is vastly underestimated in lead service lines. Lead poisoning can lead to memory loss, abdominal pain, constipation, tiredness, migraines, irritability, appetite loss, pain and tingling in extremities, and fatigue. Physiological health issues can lead to anemia, kidney failure, brain development, and death. And those are some of the human health problems that can happen from lead poisoning. My personal experience during my undergraduate internship included drying water samples from households using the aseptic technique and mailing those samples to a water test laboratory in McHenry County, Illinois. The samples would be drawn before and after real estate closings to ascertain water safety for the new residents of a home. The homes that I sampled water from were on well water and not city water, which would be sourced from Belvedere River in Boone County, Illinois. I would use the aseptic technique when collecting water. The aseptic technique included letting many gallons of water flush out of the pipes for about 5 minutes, wearing latex or nitrile gloves, rubbing alcohol applied to the spigot of the faucet, using a flame torch to heat up the spigot, letting it cool, unsealing sterile flasks, filling the flasks, and placing the sealed and labeled flasks in an ice chest to mail to the certified laboratory for water testing. On average, it would take about 30 minutes per location to do this manual process of collecting water samples. The water quality testing was done for a variety of different metals, minerals, and coliforms for each home. This map shows the percentage of water quality tests at or above 15 parts per billion. The darker red neighborhoods indicate 10% of water quality tests were above 15 parts per billion lead concentration. The pink and white neighborhoods indicate that less than 10% of water quality tests were above 15 parts per billion lead concentration. There are approximately 500,000 lead service lines in Chicago, and only 180 have been replaced as of 2022. The neighborhoods of Bronzeville, South Chicago, East Side, Garfield Park, and Forest Glen had lead limits above 15 parts per billion. Racial disparities exist in the underserved minority communities in 4 communities with a large share of African Americans. These communities have the highest amounts of lead that need intervention. Only one affluent community called Forest Glen had higher than acceptable lead limits. Lead pipes must have corrosion inhibitors to prevent lead ions from leaching onto residents' drinking water. Lead service lines could theoretically be made out of any of the following heavy metals: chromium, manganese, copper, zinc, selenium, cadmium, tin, and tungsten. To note, mercury and arsenic are also heavy metals but have greater problems than using lead. It takes months for the phosphate chemicals to bind to the dissolved lead ions. After binding, lead phosphate crystals form a solid layer within the inner walls of the pipes. It takes several months or even years for this bonding process to work completely. In Michigan, Flint's drinking water is often used as a textbook example of the lead pipes not containing any phosphates whatsoever, and that Flint River water is highly corrosive. Lead phosphate particles are formed on the interior walls of lead pipes when phosphate is added to flowing water of these lead service lines. Lead immobilization in these pipes may be more efficient in harder water because absorption of calcium and magnesium cations allowed the phosphate particles to become more neutral, and thus the aggregation happens at a pH of 7. Deposition controls and prevents particulate lead from flowing in the water supply systems, and this deposition is affected by aggregation. Excess amounts of phosphate in pipes can promote the formation of lead phosphate particles and lower dissolved lead concentration. Thus, optimal phosphate dosage must be acknowledged and utilized in all parts of the city. The Safe Drinking Water Act is a piece of legislation that protects drinking water. It was originally passed in 1974. It was amended in 1986 and 1996. Environmental Protection Agency is the governmental body to see the standards of drinking water. EPA also monitors drinking water quality for states, local authorities, and water suppliers. The states, local authorities, and water suppliers enforce the EPA standards. Lead is only one of 90 contaminants that the EPA has regulated by setting a maximum allowable contaminant limit for each of them. The current EPA standard measures to 0.015 milligrams per liter of water. Out of all residential taps that are sampled, 10% of those residences must exceed 15 parts per billion of lead in order for control corrosive measures to be instigated. The National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health requires that lead is no higher than 50 micrograms per cubic meter per 8 hours. This is the permissible exposure limit. 750 water samples had more than double the EPA allowable limit of lead, while 250 samples, as you can see from the graph, had double the EPA allowable limit of lead. As you can see, the lead service line is the pipe that connects the main water line that is under the street to the home's interior walled pipes. Old and under-maintained lead service lines are the primary cause of lead corrosion. However, there are more proximate causes. Flushing lead-containing water takes a great amount of time than the EPA's recommendations, and this is a currently used anti-corrosive measure. Low usage of water in some locations may have the greatest lead levels because more water is not continuously flowing through the pipes. Exposed and disturbed lead service lines due to construction activities also have high lead levels. Lead corrosion is vastly underestimated in lead service lines because the walls of the pipes change over time based on mixed-use patterns. A few risk factors include lead ions leach from the lead service pipes, aging plumbing, corroded pipes, human health degradation, low usage of water, and disturbed pipes. A few protective factors that are currently in place include adding phosphates to the drinking water at the water treatment facility. Unfortunately, it could take months for the phosphates to bind with lead ions in the lead service lines. Connecting the metal pipes to electricity allows the positively charged lead particles and negatively charged phosphate ions to form a lead phosphate scale much sooner. After 8 hours, the lead concentration of water will have decreased to 100 parts per billion. However, federal regulation permits no more than 15 parts per billion of lead ions in the water. The only way to eliminate the problem in its entirety is to eliminate the source of lead pipes by replacing the lead pipes with copper pipes. North American copper levels are well below the maximum allowable limit for diminishing health, so copper pipes would be the safest and most optimal method of bringing safe drinking water into homes in Chicago. Copper may only be alarming for those few people with Wilson's disease, which is a rare genetic condition, to be unable to regulate copper ions. The test rounds of water drawing sampling were found to be at higher levels than Chicago's historical compliance standard. It was found to be up to 4 times higher than the average 90th percentile value found in Chicago. Lead levels in service line pipes were found to be seasonally variable because the lead concentrations were higher in September and October and lower in March, April, and June. There are several factors that can aid in lead pipes to corrode sooner, such as pH, mineral content, lead content, temperature, aging pipes, flow rate of water, binding properties of phosphate, and lead. When it comes to replace the aging pipe infrastructure, the new pipes should be made of a different material, such as copper. When water has been suspected to have a contaminant issue, water quality investigations and other consulting firms and laboratories survey the issue to figure out the root cause of the problem. One consulting firm, Process Research Solutions, has a recommendation of sending high-velocity streams of water through suspected pipes before further solutions can be completed. There are other insoluble compounds that form with lead ions to form a dense layer on the pipe's interior walls. Some of those compounds are oxygen, carbonates, chlorides, and sulfates. Thus, phosphates are not the only possible solution. Continuous monitoring must be done for 100% of the lead service lines. The lead service lines ought to be mapped in a GIS, Geographic Information Systems, with each corresponding tested site. Water must be flushed through the lead service lines. Phosphates need to be mixed at the lead service pipes that have a higher concentration of lead. Pipes can be electrified to speed up the phosphate lead binding process. The water needs to be retested to check lead content in drinking water. The process must be repeated for every lead service line during multiple times throughout the year. These are my references. And that's it.